My name is Xavier Waller, and I'm here to introduce you to Thinking Omni. We're excited to have you at our first Storyteller session, and we're going to introduce you to Omnidisciplinary thinking and explore through some exercises how that can be used by people in the real world. So you can call this omnidisciplinary thinking, or you can call it Thinking Omni. They both mean the same thing, whatever's easier for you. So I'm going to briefly introduce Thinking Omni, myself, and what we can expect today. First, what is Thinking Omni and why use it? Right. So briefly, Thinking Omni is about better using the entirety of ourself, our life experiences, everything we know in order to reason about the world and do practical things that are useful to us. Often conventional thinking separates kind of everything such that it can often be hard to figure out how you can use one piece of knowledge in what seems like another domain. And the end result of that is it seems like you can't apply knowledge from one place to another. So what Thinking Omni does is explicitly encourages us to more seamlessly blend our experiences, our knowledge, as well as with the experiences and knowledges of the people around us, such that we can do more with less, right? And the key idea here is that there's less patterns than there are things to know, right? So if we can understand core patterns and we can understand how to apply those patterns, then the pattern plus the understanding should be enough for us to, when we're faced with new situations, say, I basically already know how to do this because I've done something similar. And that lets us use less energy to deal with something without removing the complexity of how the thing actually really is. A little bit about myself. My name is Xavier Waller. I'm a mathematical artist. And in this world, we're often asked by society to say who we are and what do we do and how do we contribute to the group. And in thinking about what is the best way to describe myself to the world, I've thought about the ways that I've engaged with art and mathematics and engineering and social group projects and things of this nature. And I tried to figure out what to call it. And at one point I was like, well, is it multidisciplinary? Is it massively multidisciplinary? I'm drawing from many things at once. But really the term omnidisciplinary came about because that was the thing that made the most sense. I'm not thinking of cooking and engineering and art. I'm not thinking of these things as separate things. In my head, they're one thing.
I'm a mathematician. I was trying to put away that part of myself because I'm also a music student. Until recently, I thought I needed to make a decision between one discipline or another, and now I think I'm going to do both and even more. So then I became a bartender, and now I talk with people, and that's super cool. I knew that I have always think like this. So it makes a lot of sense because it explains some deep parts of myself and why I couldn't always connect with other people, or why everyone calls me always like you're kind of freaky, but in a nice way sometimes, and sometimes not so much. But now I like it,
My name's David. I'm I guess a mathematician also. I don't exactly know what I am in the sense of like what I mean by me, but as Xavier said, we all have to kind of define ourselves somehow. And so I guess I should say that one thing I like one thing I find myself drawn to is finding commonalities between different disciplines and finding and communicating with others. So I think some of the best aspects of life are communication and really understanding and aligning and getting another. So math for me as a young person was a way that I could really understand what another person was saying without, we are both talking about two, and two is the same two somehow. And it was the one place that I found that I really knew for sure that I understood the other person. As I've grown up, there are other ways of really knowing for sure, in some sense, that you're aligned with someone. But finding those and articulating how you get to those and things like that is my kind of mission, I guess.
My name is Jorge, and I began in life as doing physics and mathematics, rather pure mathematics also, rather introvert guy. And then I began to realize that there were many interesting possibilities in life. I mean, I began to spread out and getting in touch with people in different walks of life. And particularly, I collaborated for many years with Francisco Varela, so I learned quite a bit of biology on the way, and also lately cognitive science of mathematics education. And so I've realized that to some extent I have cultivated separate strands, like carrying out parallel lives in my life. And after a while, those strands become sort of intertwined in a way you wouldn't have expected. I think this is very well described in some tales, Middle East tales, by the way. And so now I am especially interested in the role of metaphorization and in action, in cognition, particularly also in mathematics. So one of our perverse ideas is that theories are just unfoldings of metaphors. And eventually this allows you in a better way to transition, to move from one theory to another. So I think it's quite related to the outlook or the stance of Omni thinking.
Hi, I'm Mai. I am from the south of Chile. I started to think also, as David was saying, like, what am I? Really, and that would be a very long conversation. So right now what I do is I am a language teacher, and by that is not only languages, spoken word, but artistic languages as well. And yes, I'm fascinated with allowing people to have spaces for them to feel comfortable enough to explore themselves and where they are. And because of that, I'm fascinated with cognition and anatomy, biology, and everything that has to do with our senses and how we relate with the world.
My name is Ian Kramer. I'm 20 years old. I was born in Dallas, Texas, but just recently moved to Austin, where I met Xavier on the mountaintop as we discussed everything from running in the winter to Leonardo da Vinci. I knew I had struck a chord immediately with Xavier. So rare is it to find individuals who are willing to get outside of themselves in the sense of what they think about on a normally daily basis. Oftentimes I catch myself just with the same repeating thoughts over and over again. And I feel like I'm not grasping reality at a deeper, fundamental level. So that being said, 20 years old, I haven't really studied intensively or mastered anything to full extent, but I'm very interested in taking an omnidisciplinary, omni-thinking approach to life and everything I do going forward. So right now, I'm just here to absorb as much as I can.
So before this video, what we've all done is we've submitted a 3 to 5 minute video talking about Think Omni as it relates to something in our lives or some phenomena, something that we care about or that we know about. So what I want to do is I want to randomly pick 2 of you. The goal is twofold. One is I want you to think of a topic of your discussion in terms of the topic of the other person's discussion. So reason about your domain in another domain is the idea. And then the second exercise is engaging with the root. And so the third person will look at what the first two people are talking about and will try to identify what is the common structure between both of those things that has nothing to do with maybe the disciplines or domains. So to start, I think it's very important to stress that omnidisciplinary thinking is meant to be a philosophy, a way of thinking that is both pragmatic as well as, I guess, transcendent. And what I mean by that is you should be able to use omnidisciplinary thinking to solve real problems in your life at whatever level that they manifest. So, finding food, finding shelter, taking care of your family, or even more higher order things like understanding philosophy and your place in the world and things of this nature. So keep that in mind. And to start off, I will kind of give a brief example of how this session could go with a story of a friend of mine who is a lesbian who was engaged to be married. And at the last minute, her partner breaks off the marriage because she felt that the Bible said that this was not, it couldn't be done, right? And so this friend went to another member of the family at some point later, and she was trying to have a discussion with this other lady in the family, basically for why she should be allowed to get married. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly talk about kind of what happened and then how we can do an engaging with the root analysis of it to kind of see what was there and see how that conversation might have been able to go differently. And I think this will set the tone for how we all engage with one another in these exercises. So the strategy of the friend, we'll call her Lisa. So Lisa's intent was to say that, the Bible is flawed in this way, that way, and the other way. And therefore, because it's flawed, I should be able to get married. That was the basic structure of her argument. And as you might guess, people tend to not be swayed by this. So the conversation ended, it started off antagonistic, and it ended with neither side being persuaded by the other's arguments. So let's take an analysis of what was really going on there. It seems like the entire discussion was on religion, but actually the discussion was on the structure there and how we as humans relate and attach to certain structures of mental objects. So another way of looking at this same thing is, here is your way of life, which, you've got your legacy, you've got your family history, you've got a bit of solace in a chaotic world, right? You've got this notion that there is some sort of stability there. I'm going to come in and I'm going to rip that from off and under you, right? And I'm not even going to try to replace it with anything better, right? So by doing this engage with the root analysis, we can see that actually the problem here, the entire conversation, if you really analyze what's going on, wasn't about religion or faith at all. It was about the structures that we attach ourselves to in order to stabilize ourselves and how we engage with those and how other people engage with those structures. So understanding that, a different approach could have been taken, because if you think about this same idea, but you've thought about taking structure from someone, well, let's think of it in a completely different way that has nothing to do with religion or faith. We're all sitting on chairs right now in this video, and would any of us like for someone to just yank our chair out from under us? That's not a thing that is seen as desirable. And even if you go into the animal kingdom, I don't think that a tiger or a leopard or a deer would like it if you ripped their log or their tree from out from under them, right? So by engaging with the root, we can go to a place that is less emotionally charged. I don't think anyone's getting riled up about the fact that you can't yank a chair from underneath a person or yank a tree from out from underneath a leopard. Yet it makes a lot more sense, and there's many areas that we can talk about the same kind of thing, but without it being so emotionally charged. So this is really the idea of using omnidisciplinary thinking, is to not get caught in these rhetorical walls and to instead find ways where we can identify areas where we're in alignment so that we can then build that core root of trust that allows us together to move forward to the next step. Briefly talk about a thing that is important to you or that you know a lot about, and then we can talk about how do we discuss one thing in terms of the other.
I had sent you a question for Amaranta. and that has been on my head because tomorrow is a important day in Chile that has to do with the social uprisings that have happened around the world. So I don't know, that could be a question, or that could be that would be a place where I would go, related with social conflicts and how do we assess feelings of populations. I don't know. That's where my mind goes with Amaranta.
So let's start.
Okay. So well, that little introduction is right. Like last October, there was like a social uprising in Chile. This has happened a lot in Latin America and in other parts of the world. And Amaranta is like told us in her blog, and also a little bit on her video, that she's a bartender and that she can make drinks for like people's identity almost. So I was wondering if Chile would come into the bar and like right now, and if it asks you for a drink, what kind of ingredients would you use, and why?
Yeah, but wait, like whole Chile, like
Yeah, like the people that are protesting in the streets.
On both sides or just one side? And
Well, I'm interested in both sides really, but
and
you
these
choose
both
the side.
sides
You
means-
choose the side first.
I think I need to separate drinks first, like this is one side and this is another, but it would be a good exercise to see how these two sides could be just one drink, right? I'm going to think in alcoholic drinks just because
Yes, I think that they need that.
yeah, but I want to make a point that it is not necessary. Not, yeah, I can make drinks without alcohol, and it's super difficult also. But in this case, I think it requires alcohol. So for the apruebo section, I think it would be like a long drink first, okay, and I would put a bitter sugar syrup at the bottom. It has to be bitter and sugar at the same time, like stuck it at the bottom. Okay, so like something that it's heavy, you know, and it's so buried, but it's letting it flow over the time. And then I put my eyes on it, and on my shaker, I think I will do like a sour. And well, because it's a apruebo, I think it should be pisco, but not pisco sour. Well, it could be pisco sour, but I love
Just
making drinks with identity. So okay, this is it. Okay, I would make an herb, a bitter herb syrup for the bottom, and then I would make pisco and in a shaker, right? So pisco and white wine and lemon juice. Okay, mix it. And white wine not also, I think it would have to be pipeño.
Okay. So
And
this is naming pisco and pipeño, like these are traditional drinks. And apruebo, the apruebo part, so
yes.
there's an apruebo sector and rechazo, which apruebo is to approve a new constitution of Chile and to reject a new constitution in Chile. to change the constitution in Chile. And so the apruebo is the largest majority of people that started the revolution, I was going to say, but the social uprising last.
But I need to explain how the flavors are. Pisco and pipeño are made from grapes. Pisco is a still drink, and pipeño is just fermented, and both are super sweet. But I think it has to be like with the identity of Chile. You know, these are traditional drinks from Chile, and both are super sweet. One is dense. Pisco is dense, and pipeño is less dense. Yeah. So if you shake it, it would be a flow over this. And if you put, you have to put sour, because what's happening now, it's a sour feeling between, we have been suffering and we have been, I don't know, hopeless for so many years, you know, but we care about, the fact is we don't care about Chile, the country, but we love to be Chileans. Mm-hmm. So we love our traditions, we love our drinks, we love our food, we love our nature, you know, but we don't like Chile. That's a super high dichotomy, right? So we need these traditional things to connect ourselves. So if you have pisco sour, but I don't care if it's Peruvian or Chilean, I really don't care. I like pisco and I like sour. So if you mix it with pipeño, you have this sour and feeling that it's conflicting with yourself. I would put it over my drink and maybe top with, I don't know, maybe soda, just for the flavor. But the thing is, you have to remember, we have this bitter sweet at the bottom. So while you're drinking this sour feeling, you're going deeper onto this bitter feeling. And it's also there, and it's dragging you down. It's mixing while you're just acknowledge this feeling, this other feeling that is there. And this is at the bottom, right? The approval section now is full of hope. We are just speaking out loud. We haven't been able to speak out loud for so many years. We always have been told what to do, what to say, what to feel. And now we are like connecting with other people who feels the same way. And we're now thinking, okay, we can change this, right? So we're so actually full of hope. And we're always saying, we're not going to let other people like put our food over us. I think the reject section is like terrified. Actually, how many people of the reject section are actually planning our country? How many of those? And how many are just being played by the people that rule a country? I think there's absolutely no majority of people who actually wants to stay with the constitution. And you have this it's only in the reject section, you have this top portion that plays the vast majority of the reject section that are all also being told what to do and what to say and what to think, and you should vote for this and you should vote for that. Maybe they are always been kept in the fear, right, for this section. So I think that should be like a salty iceberg. We have this drink that is terremoto, earthquake. So it has ice cream and also pipeño, and I would make a a salty ice cream?
No, I think that this kind of analysis, like I have worked with NGOs and also been in programs for peace building and in very high conflict areas. And these kind of exercises should be like required to do for leaders, because it is such a different way of understanding, because you go imagining the colors, the flavors, the image of feelings, like really, like you're describing feelings, Amaranta, you know?
Yeah.
So what would happen if you were to mix these two drinks that you just made?
It would explode.
Yeah. It will happen what it's happening now, you know?
But that's not what we want. In any society, you would rather that conflict is resolved.
Is there a way to make it taste good
Exactly.
afterwards?
If you can make it taste good, then you have a hint at how to rectify two sets of philosophies that seem like they are fatally in opposition. What is shared? What is shared? So we've highlighted what is different. That's very easy to do. What is shared? What is the same between these two?
To resolve or to solve this conflict, you see that both drink has something that that it's solid. The react section has this solid stuff over the top, like an iceberg, and salty, you know, and the approva section has this syrup, sweet syrup in the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what they have in common, and the other is just wine. Okay, so it's white wine and red wine, and salty and sweetie. To solve this conflict, the ice should be melted, because you have to solve the conflict of the pyramid, right? And in the approval drink, the syrup should be blended. So that way you will solve this root conflict. You know?
I think that I would really like to see a blog post about this. But like, you know, because also it's difficult to create drinks if you, if I am from some side, like you would have to like separate yourself a little bit from your own opinion or view.
Omni encourages is to detach, not to throw away, detach to understand, and to make sure that you have a good vantage point going to the mountaintop. Get your vantage point, and then go back to your life with this experience. To find commonality and to explore. So I think the idea is, of the things that were discussed, what are the fundamental elements of what was discussed, and the value of being able to identify those fundamental elements is, let's say this was not, like this is fairly safe in that we are all acquainted with one another. But if we were to try to have this same conversation in a more charged environment where someone has labeled themselves with one side and someone with the other, and you're trying to have an actual conversation to move forward and make progress that benefits the entire group, not one side or the other. How do you go from this is what these people know, this is what that people know, to the end result of now we can actually trust each other and have enough understanding, mutual understanding, that we can move forward? And so that's the benefit of engaging with the root. Maybe Jorge and then David, both of you can say what your understanding of the root would be, and maybe give your perspective.
Yeah, well, to me, on one side, there was this powerful metaphor of taste related to drink making. And there also, I think there was another, maybe unspoken metaphor, solving a conflict. Solve is like dissolve. So you have solving what is solid. I think this sort of emerged, and it wasn't really explicit, maybe in your heads before. And now myself, I am rather alien to the world of drinks. So it was a bit of an effort to try to, in some sense, step into the shoes or sandals of Amaranta as a bartender.
So I guess what I saw happening was like metaphorizing the conflicts, the two sides of the conflict in terms of drinks, and kind of taking all sorts of pieces of how they see the world and see themselves and phrasing them in another language that was kind of safer and not about the actual thing. So it's some kind of combination of this, that, and the other thing that represent, you know, these pieces. And we did that, Amaranta did that for both sides. And then, and so then the hope would be that that metaphor is strong enough that we can answer Xavier's question of like, how could the two sides, how could the two drinks be resolved? And that if we figured that one out, then we would figure out the, we would have some new idea about the first one. But it sounds like what needs to happen is this kind of honest exploration of why the two sides are what they are. And even though I kind of got that Amaranta seemed to be more on the approve side, I don't that there was honesty about, you know, really looking into what's behind the reject side and what are they feeling that's real and that we can understand. And that's where, you know, you peel off the strategy of how we get to what we want, and you just notice what's true about or what's real about the way people are feeling about what's happening. Feelings that we've all shared or had before.
And I think that to take like these big conflicts, like world conflicts in the world, because conflicts have a kind of similar dynamic. It's an important thing to always get to. Like, it's important to see it and to see this kind of thinking into solving my own problems, personal problems. But these overaching problems are always there, and they have always been there in our societies. So it's always, I don't know, interesting for me to go there and see what can we do different and what can move me to action in a different way now.
If you watch May's video, May has this exercise that has kept me going. This for the up-down illusion, right? In which she put it like this. She says that the up-high difficult notes, it's just an illusion that our brain makes. Okay, so she put it like this, and she sing like these high notes and the lower notes on the other side. I was thinking that this could not also be a line, could also be a circle. Like, okay, so it is like, ooh, right? I think both sides of the line are an illusion also. And it's always like fluidly movement in everywhere. Dichotomies are part of the world, but they need each other, right?
I guess in some sense, it seems a bit like when you give people a dichotomy, you give them two choices, then they line up along that axis, and maybe this kind of half donut thing or way of seeing it as a circle, or just the fact that it is mixing. I think that not only is there like this dichotomy is created by the question itself, but like there are people on the edges that are working to keep, in your half donut, there are people on the edges that are keeping the two sides segregated so that you're not allowed to cross that boundary. because the people you're hanging out with will tell you that you're being bad or something. So there's actually biopower working to, keep it the way it is. Anyway, yeah, I like the idea of undoing the dichotomy in some sense and saying, yes, that is one question we could ask, but in some sense, there's many different ways to phrase where we are in this world, and like they will line us up along different sorts of magnets will cause different sorts of polarization, I guess.
That I'll leave us with. I've been reading a book called Human Action, and there's a quote somewhere in the book that said, "Men fool themselves in believing that they are free to choose between various ideas and between what they call truth and error. They themselves do not think. It is historical providence that manifests itself in their thoughts." Different variations have been stated by many individuals over time, but the real idea is that we really only have access to the thought patterns that society makes available to us, and we can use those as tools. If we want to make different things happen, we can either recombine them, which the act of recombining itself could be a thought pattern, or we could do some research and identify new thought patterns that then society gets to use, and that gives us the freedom to, do we have to think of things in terms of dichotomies, or is there another way? Now we have this thought pattern that lets us do that, and so on and so forth. So I thought this was an interesting. Thank you all for your time, and this was a wonderful session that we had, and I enjoyed everyone's ideas and contributions.
Thank you.